Christmas is one of the most beautiful times of year where we have during Advent to reflect upon ourselves and prepare for the coming of Christ. Slovak traditions and customs in the time leading up to Christmas Day are unique, and I'm excited to relive them with all of you tonight. Learn some interesting facts and tidbits along the way from our knowledgeable presenters. Before we introduce the two presenters we have tonight, I have the honor to welcome the president of the First Catholic Slovak Union, Andrew Rajak, to say a few opening remarks. I add he has been a keen supporter of bringing us together tonight and wants to continue to offer other webinars to our Jednota members. President Rajec, over to you.
Hi everyone, Vesela Vianoce, and welcome to our Christmas webinar. For those who don't know me, I'm Andrew Rajec, in Slovak, president of the First Catholic Slovak Union, a not-for-profit fraternal benefit society founded by Father Stefan Furdek in 1890, located in Cleveland, Ohio. Father Furdek was born in 1855 in Trstená, north central Slovakia. At that time, it was called Upper Hungary. He came to Cleveland in 1882 at the request of the bishop to work with local immigrants of Czech and Slovak descent. There were a lot of people that came in the late 1800s and early 1900s from that area. Father Furdek was an interesting man. He was a cosmopolitan guy and involved in many activities, both political and religious. He was the first president of the Slovak League of America, which still exists. And the Slovak League was a key player in founding the state of Czechoslovakia in 1918, after the First World War. He also wrote many books and articles in both Slovak and Czech. Our society, First Catholic Slovak Union, helped found over 200 Catholic and Byzantine churches in the US and Canada over the years. FCC, our society, has supported the Catholic faith and Slovak culture since 1890, including during the years Czechoslovakia was under communism. We embraced the founding of the Slovak Republic in 1993 and maintained good relations with the embassy in Washington, D.C., and also the consulate in New York. Our society has over 47,000 members across the country. We invite you to be a member. Check our website, fcsu.com. We offer competitive insurance rates and annuity products. Excuse me. We are proud to support the work of Gabriela and Susanna in spreading the Slovak culture in the English language. They're doing a great job with the webinars and also with several books that they produced. Check out Global Slovakia on the website, globalslovakia.com. Thank you again, ladies, for giving us opportunity to make our presentation. And thank you all for listening. Enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction, President Rajec. It's a pleasure and honor for us to make this webinar for your community and to further share Slovak culture and heritage with the world, and in this case, fellow Slovak Americans. First of all, before we get started with the presentation, I want to quickly introduce Global Slovakia to our new audience, as well as thank Jednota, the First Slovak Catholic Union, for their support and patronage of Global Slovakia. We've been privileged to have their support alongside SAC, Slovak American Cultural Center, in the production and publication of several of our books, most recently Super Slovaks, that shares the stories of 50 movers and shakers that helped to shape Slovakia and the world, as well as the book that came before that, which was our third book, Czechoslovakia Behind the Iron Curtain, a 600-page production that documents the 41 years of totalitarian control that happened in Czechoslovakia, particularly telling the story from the Slovak perspective. So thank you so much, President Rajec, and to your organization for your generosity and for your patronage of Global Slovakia. Through that, you help us to share Slovakia with the world, as this slide says. So a little bit about us. Gabrielle and I had the pleasure to run into each other, or perhaps it was fate, when we were doing our PhDs on very prestigious scholarships in London, United Kingdom. It was there that we first came together. It was there that we really rediscovered our passion for Slovakia and basically the need to share this culture and heritage and history with the world, particularly using the vehicle of the English language. So much of Slovak history is told from the Slovak perspective in the Slovak language, and it's not necessarily digestible by the global community. So Gabrielle and I really saw the gap in the market, and we really viewed it like our mission to help bring our country into the spotlight, because it's a remarkable opportunity in terms of Slovakia coming from 1,000 years of struggle, of not having its own voice, of not having its own kingdom, of not having its own country, and always being the lesser player, be it in Czechoslovakia or of course in the Kingdom of Hungary. So since 1993, we've stepped onto the world stage as an independent country, but we don't actually have the skill set and the know-how in terms of how to promote ourselves and how to brand ourselves and how to share our story. So Gabriela and I are very privileged that somehow we can help our country become more visible. And we've been very active in this mission. Since 2018, we've released 4 books that we've co-authored. Currently, we're working on a 5th book, which we'll talk more about towards the end of this webinar. In addition to that, we have these webinars that take place about twice a month, which you can learn more about if you follow us on Global Slovakia Facebook page, where we advertise them frequently. Our webinars are often free in terms of really making it as accessible as possible to as many people as possible to join us. One of our most recent webinars, for example, had over 600 registrants and over 300 people taking part on it. So our audience is continually growing, and we're very, very grateful for that. So actually, Gabby, you can go to the next slide. So we'll use this opportunity to introduce our latest book. It's currently in the works. It's called Slovak Settlers to the New World, and it actually documents the stories of many of your own ancestors, your grandparents and your great-grandparents that came over to America to start a new life. Many of you, of course, are familiar with these stories because they've been passed on also orally by hearing these stories from your families. But what's remarkable is actually the academic study behind it, which will be incorporated in this book, which really reflects just how tremendous this migration wave was. It truly was a great migration from the old world into the new world. Many Europeans moved during this era, about 40 million Europeans. But in those 40 million Europeans, about 1/3 of the Slovak nation actually emigrated abroad. And these communities were very, very tight-knit in America, and in the old world, in the old country, in Slovakia and Czechoslovakia. And unfortunately, they were severed beginning after the Cold War. And it had a lot to do with geopolitics. It also had to do with the fact that in Czechoslovakia, the Communist Party was ruling, and it had a very aggressive anti-emigre policy. So it was not safe for a lot of Slovaks to continue to have relations with their Slovak American cousins, uncles, family members. Unfortunately, since the end of the Second World War, a lot of these community ties were severed. Now, 30 years after the collapse of the Iron Curtain, we're beginning to rebuild those ties, and we can truly witness a revival in interest in Slovak language, and Slovak culture, and Slovak food. And we're very grateful to be part of that revival as an organization, as Global Slovakia, but also in terms of creating this book, which we really believe will contribute to cultural heritage, documenting this important great migration wave, uniting the Slovak diaspora abroad to better understand the stories of their predecessors and what they had to go through when they were leaving the old world and coming to the new one. But also for Slovaks in Slovakia. It will be released bilingually, and Slovaks in Slovakia for the first time in generations will be actually able to learn about that tremendous migration wave, and to learn that indeed there are somewhat these colonies or family members or kin that live across the ocean. So it will be a very unifying project, and we're very, very excited about that, and we hope to release it in the new year. So that is it for me, and I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Gabriela, who actually has a background education, bachelor's and master's from Slovakia and Slovak culture. She then went on to study in the United Kingdom, did multiple master's degrees in tourism and tourism development before she went on to study Slovak corruption and mindsets for her PhD, where it is I had the privilege to meet her. And she is truly an expert on Slovak culture and traditions, some of which she will cover in this webinar here. It's going to be Advent, it's going to be Christmas. And I'm always fascinated to be her student in these webinars because like many of you, we've witnessed these traditions in our homes. We've witnessed these traditions during the holidays, particularly during Christmas and during Easter. We repeat them. They've been passed on to us from our parents, our grandparents. But there's actually very, very, very deep meanings behind the simple things sometimes that we do. And Gabriela is truly one of the best experts in unpacking the meanings. So Dr. G, I hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Susanna, and thank you, Sabina, too, and thank you, President Reyes, for giving us the opportunity to share a little bit of our love for the traditions that we cherish in Slovakia this time of year. Welcome, everyone. We hope that you'll find this not just sort of heartwarming, but also informative, and perhaps you'll find something to introduce into your holidays as we move through the presentation and through the individual traditions. There is so much to talk about, so we will cover the most important aspects of this treasure trove of customs and traditions. And we'll go right in with St. Nicholas Day, which we're celebrating today. So happy St. Nicholas Day from Slovakia to everyone who's joined us today. This day is already sort of 2 weeks into the Advent period, which in the busy 21st century is often kind of overwhelmed by the chase for the perfect gifts and preparing our houses and decorations and so on and so forth. But the original purpose of Christian Advent was to prepare ourselves sort of internally, spiritually for the new beginning and for the arrival of, for the birth of Jesus Christ. In Slovakia too, this period has a very significant and deep legacy behind it, spiritual as well as pragmatic and ancient. You know, our predecessors, most of them, they lived off the land, they worked the land, and so they lived in tune and in harmony with the cycles of nature. And at this time of year, here it's cold, it's dark, and there is not so much to do in the fields and in the forest. So people traditionally gathered more indoors, and they spend more time with their family, with their friends, with their loved ones. So this was time to spiritually prepare for Christmas, as well as time to gather, to be together, and to support one another through the harsh season of winter. So it's important to appreciate both those aspects of Advent as we talk about traditions that accompany it. So St. Nicholas Day on the 6th of December commemorates the life and the persona of St. Nicholas, who was one of the early Christians. He was a bishop in modern day Turkey, and he became the symbol of generosity because as a man who came from an affluent background, he showed much generosity to those who were less fortunate than him in sharing his wealth and abundance. And hence it's in his name that the custom and the tradition of giving each other gifts on this day was started as that symbol of giving, a symbol of generosity, a symbol of sharing love and caring in the community. So today in Slovakia, as you are probably familiar with, we give little somethings, especially to children. So it's little sweets to the gifts. It's a much loved holiday, and it's also known as Little Christmas. In Slovakia, this is normally accompanied by procession of these three figures that you see on the slide, and that's St. Nicholas, an angel, and a devil. who come to schools, kindergartens, town squares. It's part of community festivities to reward the children who have been obedient in the last year and to discipline those who were naughty. So this is a moment of like passing on certain moral values onto children. But the custom is much older. It was documented in this region of Central Europe in the Middle Ages, but it looked a bit different back then. Saint Nicholas is a patron of children, but he's also a patron saint of students. So in the Middle Ages, this day was a day for students to party hard. Not so much in villages, but usually in towns and in cities where there were schools or universities. The students would gather, they would elect their leader, who would dress up as Saint Nicholas, and they would go through the town or through the city, knocking on the doors of the houses, delivering good wishes and sort of goodwill as the ambassadors of Saint Nicholas, and receiving a little something in return, usually nuts, fruits, something like that. But then the festive mood, as time went by, turned a little more rough than was welcome. And these student parties became dominated by alcohol, but also by playing pranks at the local community and demanding those gifts, which is why they were banned in the 18th century by Joseph II, and only this remnant of the angel, the devil, and Saint Nicholas survived until today. So that's one layer of that tradition. It also goes a little bit deeper that I would like to touch on just briefly today, because these traditions were around even before Christianity arrived in Slovakia, which was in the 9th century. And people used to celebrate again by gathering and also by dressing themselves up, usually in sheepskins and in furs, because they were celebrating a different persona. And this time it was the Slavic god Veles, who was the patron of farm animals and patron of farmers. So he was said to have taught humans how to farm and how to domesticate animals. And so agriculture has always been important to us. So his days or his time of the year was accompanied by these celebrations, by these ceremonies that later on were absorbed into Christianity. And something brand new and unique was created, and that was the holiday or the feast day of Santa Claus, where we see the old world and the new world merging to create something unique that's still alive in Slovakia today. So these two aspects, the ancient and the Christian, the ancient being present in folk traditions, the Christian being present in the spiritual tradition of the region, are still alive in Slovakia today. They're still practiced, and this is what makes the season so unique and so enchanting. Saint Nicholas was also patron of merchants. This is a much lesser known fact, and so our predecessors went to the 19th century used this day to close the big deals, because they believed that the deal that was closed on this day would be successful, would bring in the abundance. So that those deals were protected and overseen by St. Nicholas himself. Now, St. Nicholas Day is one of the many special days that mark the period of Advent in Slovakia. Each is dedicated to a different saint, and it starts in late November and runs through till Christmas Eve. And every single one of these days has special kinds of traditions and customs attached to it. The next one in line is Santa Lucia's Day on the 13th of December, so about a week from now. It's again celebrated in honor of an early Christian martyr, Santa Lucia, who was a young girl or young lady who refused to give up her faith. She converted to Christianity and she was punished for it in those early years of Christianity when it was dangerous to be a Christian and to proclaim oneself Christian. This moment is celebrated and honored in Slovakia by a so-called procession of Lucky or Lucias. And these are young girls, the Lucky, they embody the Santa Lucia, her purity, her essence, her youthfulness. They're dressed in white. Usually they have their faces whitened with flour too. They carry a goose feather and they move in a silent procession through villages at the moment, but the tradition is also being brought back to towns and cities. They visit every house, every family. They enter the house silently without speaking a single word. And using the goose feather, they cleanse the house ceremonially. And this tradition, again, brings together the Christian and the pre-Christian, because although the girls commemorate Santa Lucia and her life, what they do is older than Christianity, and it goes back to the belief of our ancient predecessors that winter is time of darkness, and it's not just physical darkness of long nights and short days, but it's also a time when it's cold outside, so it comes with all kinds of dangers and challenges for the people at this time of year. In winter, death was never too far. Starvation was common. Illnesses were common as well. So people interpreted this as there being dark forces that they needed to protect themselves from. And this was the job or the role of these Lucias, the Lucky, who were removing all that illness, death, all that you don't want in your house as you prepare for Christmas, all that you want to sweep away to protect your family and to protect your house. And that they did with a goose feather. And it's one of the traditions that has been continually running in the region for centuries, and it's still happening today, especially in rural areas of Slovakia. And I actually have a story because I was telling about this to a family member who just recently moved to a village, a very rural area, tiny little place. And he was visited by a procession of Santa Lucias last year on 13th of December. And he was really surprised. He didn't know how to react because obviously they didn't speak, they were silent. He was so confused, but it was a testimony to the fact that these communities still keep the traditions alive. These special days throughout Advent were also governed by all kinds of rules and restrictions, usually related to women and how they should or should not behave on this day. So for instance, on Santa Lucia's day, women, excuse me, I will just mute everyone again to make sure we can proceed smoothly. So women were discouraged from leaving their house and visiting other houses on this day because it was believed that if the first person who enters your house on this day is a woman, that will mean bad luck for your family. Women should also refrain from doing certain kinds of works and tasks so as to not invite misfortune into the community. And there was also this love component of this day that maybe you know of, when young girls or maidens, single girls who were looking for love, were trying to predict or maybe hasten the arrival of their future husband into their life. So they wrote, they prepared 12 little pieces of paper, and on each piece they wrote a name of a boy that they liked, prospective husband. Then they closed those little pieces of paper, they put them in the basket, and every day from Santa Lucia's to Christmas Eve, they would take one paper out, not looking at it, just burning it. And the last piece of paper that would remain with that last name, that man would become their husband, or so they thought. Because of course, love, marriage, family, fertility, bringing in children was very important to the survival of the family and to the survival of the community. So people dedicated a lot of time and energy to making sure that the cycle of life keeps moving. Another thing to mention about these special days is that due to the fact that our forefathers and foremothers were dependent on the land, they were dependent on agriculture, it was absolutely vital and critical to them that the conditions for growing cereal and other kinds of foods were ideal. Because if harvest was bad, that was not just unfortunate, that could spell a disaster for them. So they used these days, Santa Lucia, Santa Nicola's Day, and the others, to predict future weather patterns. And that's why until today in the Slovak folklore, we have many weather-related sayings that are related to these days. Today we see it more as fun, but as I said to our predecessors, this was important because they really needed to know what winter will be like, how long will it be, when will it snow or not, you know, because they needed to know what was the time to sow the seeds. They needed to prepare should the season not go as well as they hoped for. So it was a matter of survival for them. And these weather wisdoms developed over centuries, and they were built on many generations observing the weather and the environment around them. So in these pieces of wisdom is encoded a lot of experience and many lifetimes of our predecessors. So moving on from Santa Lucia's to St. Thomas Day on 21st, this might be one of the lesser known feast days. It's also winter solstice, which was one of the most important holidays to the people who inhabited this region for centuries before the arrival of Christianity, because from this day onwards, days are beginning to get longer again. So that's good news for everyone who cannot wait for spring and warm weather to arrive. And that's why it was celebrated by people gathering and, you know, sharing again gifts and foods and being merry. And this was kind of the pre-Christian celebration of Christmas. Of course, it was not Christmas back then. They were celebrating the sun and the arrival of sun again. But that was translated in Middle Ages Slovakia into the event that was still happening at the turn of 20th century. And that was the traditional pig slaughter or pig killing that took place in the houses of people who would keep farm animals, which was almost everyone, on this day, because it was believed that pig meat or the meat of the pig killed on this day would last longer, would stay fresh longer, and that the pork fat from this animal had healing properties. So on this day, again, people would gather because this event is, until today, if it still happens, it's an opportunity for people to get together, share food, and share some goodness as they prepare for Christmas, Of course, it's still part of the Advent fasting period. So meat was usually not eaten, but it was processed, made into bacon, smoked, and put aside to last people for the remainder of the winter. And now we are getting to the grand finale of the season, and that's Christmas Eve, which is rich with customs and traditions, because it was one of the most important holidays, and it still is in Slovakia. So it was a long day, especially for women in the past, who would get up after midnight to make sure that everything that had to be baked and cooked was ready before the sunrise. So that was quite a hard labor before the sun even rose on the day and awoke the rest of the family. So you can imagine how they must have felt. And we can maybe sympathize a little bit, because those Christmas dishes that we're going to talk about in a minute were humble, but that doesn't mean that they didn't take a while to prepare. Now, for the rest of the family, the role of men would be to bring in enough water and enough wood to last the family for the duration of the 3 days. So Christmas Eve, first Christmas holiday, and the second Christmas holiday. Because it was during those 3 days that the family was not to engage in any work. They were to focus on the spiritual essence of the holiday and on being with family and being with friends, not on work. So this was time to rest and enjoy and rejuvenate. So the role of men was to provide all the necessities for that. And while girls and women would go and wash their face in the spring or well water on the morning of Christmas Eve, in the hope that this would make them beautiful during the year to come. But this water was also brought to the elderly or to those who were sick, because there was a belief in the culture that water that's fresh and that's brought in on this day has special healing properties. After all that, the house was cleaned, but there was one thing that could not be done when it came to cleaning on this day. There was a strict ban on sweeping in households, not to save people the labor, but because they believed that Christmas was the time when the souls of the departed loved ones visit their families for a short period of time, to spend time with them at this special time of year. And you don't want to sweep them out by accident. So hence the ban on sweeping on Christmas Eve. There would also be a series of other customs dedicated especially to the ancestors. So people would leave a little bit of pulses of some kind, usually peas, in the corners of the room for the deceased loved ones or for other souls that might be roaming the area on the day, in order to give thanks and in order to honor those that came before us. And as the ladies of the house were laying the Christmas dinner table, they would set their one plate or one place for either a random passerby in the name of Christian and Christmas generosity and hospitality, or for the souls of the deceased ancestors to join them in that celebration on that special day for that special meal. The table itself also attracted a lot of attention, and it needed to be prepared very carefully. Usually a white linen cloth was put on the table. Often it would be decorated with red thread, because the red was considered protective color. And as I said, it's winter, it's dark, it's cold. People are getting sick, people are dying, so you do want to protect yourself in any way you can, also by using this red on the ceremonial table. There would be a chain tied around the legs of the table, and during the Christmas Eve dinner, the family members would put their feet on that chain, and that was to protect the togetherness of the family for the year to come. It was, again, not just a cute custom. The survival back then and prosperity of the family depended on the members of the family working together towards a common goal. So this was, again, on one of the vital key tasks that people performed on the day in order to have a good year ahead. Because it was, I mentioned it a few times already, speaking about Christmas Eve, that things that were done today on this day were to sort of make sure that the future of the next 12 months will be favorable to them. And that's why people really watched what they thought today or what they said, because they believed, you know, what happens today will accompany them for the next 12 months. And of course, you only want good things to come to you. So you should think good thoughts and speak kind words in order to attract that back. Once the table was laid and the family was all there, they were allowed to sit down and to start the dinner once they heard the bells of the local church tower tolling. So that was a signal for everyone in the community that they were now allowed to break the Christmas Eve fast, sit down and enjoy. And from this moment onwards, nobody should leave the table, except for the one person, usually the lady of the house, who would be serving others, who would keep the food coming. This was done because there was a belief that if you leave the table, that will invite illness or death into the family. So again, that's something you want to avoid. So everybody would stick together for the duration of the dinner. On the table, you would find a few staple things, and that would be a candle, a Bible, and a Christmas tree that wouldn't be standing in the corner, but it would be hanging over the Christmas dinner table. Later on, it would be a coniferous tree, tip of the tree, or branches from a coniferous tree. But before that, the symbolic Christmas tree would be made of hay, because hay was believed to have magical properties, and it was important to the people who were rural folk and who lived thanks to agriculture. So all this was in place when the individual dishes started coming onto the table. There were 7, 9, or 12 of them. The meaning of these numbers is symbolic. They all symbolize good luck, good health, completeness, prosperity. And although it sounds like, wow, they were really having a good time having 12 dishes, those meals, the individual courses, they were rather humble and symbolic. So this was not about overeating or overindulging. The food or the menu on the day was so diverse because it was meant to contain everything that the family harvested that year. And because having that on the dinner table was the hope to secure as good harvest or even better harvest in the next year, it was also a way of giving thanks to the family and to the land and to nature for providing this for them. So this was kind of Christmas Slovak Thanksgiving tradition. And it was also coming to the end of the Advent fast that lasted for 4 weeks. So Christmas Eve dinner was still part of the fasting period for the Catholics. So usually no meat would be present on this day. That would only come the day after. So let's have a little closer look at what the dinner contained before we wrap it up. Some of these dishes you'll be very familiar with, such as the very thin wafers with honey called oplátky. Those are sort of an at-home version, an at-home embodiment of the body of Christ. It would be served with honey, a symbol of love, togetherness, and health. In some families and in some regions, there was a custom to break one and give a little piece of it to every member of the family. So ceremonially breaking bread together. That would be one dish. Then would come a soup that would be different depending on your religious background, but also where you lived. In Eastern Slovakia, it would be sauerkraut, kapusnica, or mushroom soup. In Western Slovakia, it would be fish soup, or lentil soup. So there was a great variety of what would be served as a soup dish, but there always had to be soup because soup is one of the staples of Slovak cuisine. And it would usually, in one way or another, incorporate the pulses, so lentils, beans, chickpeas, and such like, because these were symbols of prosperity and of abundance. And again, that's something that you want to invite into your life for the year to come. These are still very much present in Slovakia today. We still have the wafers, we still have the soup, but what gradually disappeared of the Christmas menu, but it's now being brought back, are the porridges, both sweet and savory. The porridge was a staple of the people. This is what nurtured and nourished generations upon generations of our predecessors. It's a filling, simple meal. It's very affordable, so that was, the embodiment of your livelihood for people for centuries. But it was also a ceremonial and very special dish for the Slavic predecessors of Slovaks that would be served during their holidays and celebrations. So of course it had to be present during the Christmas Eve dinner. And again, it would feature lentils, beans, and so on. Rice later on. So things that are many and they are tiny. And therefore they symbolized prosperity. There would also be a cake of a different sort of description in different types of regions. But that cake would usually contain nuts or poppy seeds again being a symbol of prosperity. So again, something that absolutely has to be there for that special dinner. There would also be pasta, such as pyrohy or different kinds of noodles. And then there would be sweet dishes. Aside from the cakes, there would also be dried fruits that were a true treat, especially for children. There would be nuts. There would be alcohol that was served. And all this together made a very special meal that you were not supposed to overeat on. In fact, in some families, you were only supposed to take 3 mouthfuls from each one, just to try it and just to symbolically share it, as not to, put it all down mindlessly. Anything that was left over from this dinner would never be thrown away. Slovaks always had such respect for food, so they cherished it and protected it and appreciated it anyways. But on this day, they would really take care to make sure that they didn't waste so much as a single breadcrumb. And breadcrumbs themselves, they were kept, and they were either used when they were sowing the first seeds in the spring in order to bless the soil, or they were used in healing, or they were giving to the farm animals to also sort of bless them and protect them. You should also give a little bit of everything that appeared on your Christmas Eve dinner table to the farm animals to share the abundance with them as important members of the family and the community, and as a sort of safeguard of family survival, because you want to keep the animals healthy and safe, not just the humans. Once the dinner was over, the family headed to a church for the midnight mass, sort of as a family. So everybody would go together and everybody would return together to spend the first Christmas holiday together as well in that tight family circle. And it was on the second Christmas holiday, or St. Stephen's Day, that the family opened up to visitors, family, friends, neighbors, joining them in celebration. There were many other customs that kind of unfolded along these major rituals that were practiced. So for instance, girls, again, those that wanted to get married within this day, go out and they would shake fences, and they would listen to, from direction, and the sound of an animal, usually a dog, came, because that signaled the direction from which their future husband would come into their life. So this day was just brimming with traditions and customs, and there was much for the family to do, and many little rules and customs to observe as they moved through those 24 hours that they much looked forward to for the remainder of the year. In their lives, Christmas and Christmas Eve were not about the gifts. Of course, people did give each other little symbolic gifts, usually, something to eat, nuts, cakes, little cookies, at home, or homemade toys for children, but it was not about the gifts, and the gifts were really humble and symbolic. The holiday was about the family sort of supporting one another and being together. And that was a very quick run through this season so rich in customs and traditions. I hope that you found a little something in there that resonated. Perhaps it brought back memories, and perhaps you found something that you might implement to your holiday routine this year. So we have Santa Lucia's Day coming up, we have St. Thomas Day, and then of course, the actual Christmas itself. So thank you for your attention. If there are any questions, I think we have a little time to take them. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Please don't be shy.
I have one question.
You're welcome to share your own.
Yes, someone speaking.
I have a question. What was the name of the wafer cookie, and how do you spell it? The wafer cookie that they had for Christmas?
Oplatki.
Oplatki. Sorry, oplatki. Yes, I was thinking about the gingerbread cookies, but yes, oplatki.
So how do you spell that?
I will write that in the chat for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Someone already did.
Get that recipe?
No, you should get those at a local church. Has those.
So it's a bit, with oplatki, it's a bit tricky. You need actually a special machine to make them. Traditionally, they would be made by the local teacher and distributed by students. So go ahead.
They actually look like host material. So you kind of need to have the sisters in some parishes make them. I know that.
Oh, I thought they were the cookie you were showing on the table, the little rolled cookie.
Trubičky?
Yes, it's the same.
It was on that table, the picture you had of the Christmas table. That's what I thought you were referring to, that little rolled.
Yes, it's the same thing. It's just different shape of it. But it's the same dough, it's the same process. It's just that with the wafers, you kind of just keep them flat. But when you want to make trubíčky, you roll them at the end of the process. But it's the same thing.
And we eat them throughout the pre-Christmas period. Like I was today just at the grocery store and I was looking at purchasing them. I refrained because I like them so much, and you can just gobble up the whole set. But there's a good comment here. Somebody actually purchased them on Amazon.
Okay.
And there's a select Slovak and Czech store as well that Sabina also put in the chat, so you can get authentic ones there from our region.
If you don't want to have fun on the nights leading up to Christmas, making them yourselves. It actually takes a lot of patience. Yes.
Appreciate very much the history. And my mother's from Ireland and my dad is from Slovakia, and I have ignored Slovakia.
Yeah.
And I appreciate all that you have given us tonight.
Right.
And is it going to be in the new book that you're coming out with all of this history that you talked about be included?
Actually,
yeah,
we have it in our new course. Gabby, you can give a quick intro and I'll send the link in the chat.
So actually, we are working on a book too that would include recipes and traditions. That's in the making. It will come out after the New Settlers in the New World. But if you would like to get something now, we have this new course now called Art of Slovak Christmas, where we gathered all these Christmas traditions, so stuff that we talked about today, but more, because there is much more to Slovak Advent and Slovak Christmas. There are more customs, there is more symbolism to look into, there are more layers to everything that we do at this time of year, and we put that all into a very digestible set of audio, visual, and written materials that are in the course. You will also find recipes there, carols, stories, extra webinars on the theme that will tell you even more if that interests you about Christmas, but also about the period of carnivals that comes after. And right now we have a special offer. So when you buy that course, The Art of Slovak Christmas, you get another course as a gift from us, and that's the Slovak fairy tales, which unfolds 7 classic Slovak fairy tales that again tell us a lot about our culture and the way of life of our predecessors. So that's on special now to celebrate.
And what's really cool about this offer is actually that you truly do get 2 courses for the price of 1, because you have the Art of Slovak Christmas, and as the flyer says, it is really your ultimate guide to recreating a Slovak Christmas in your home, or better understanding these traditions and the deeper meanings behind them, as Gabriela uncovered here today. But as she was also saying here, you get this whole other course that has a $144 value, and it's Slovak fairy tales. So if you're looking to reconnect with your roots, better understand your origins, one of the best ways and fastest tracks to understand that the secrets of a culture is truly in the fairy tales, and they're in Slovak, they're in English, and we also dissect them for you. So it's a great learning experience. It's a wonderful value for your money. You get the Art of Slovak Christmas for $166, but as I mentioned, you get for free this $144 course, Slovak fairy tale.
And these courses are on your own time. I mean,
yes, they go at your own pace, online courses. And if you actually just click on the link I just posted in the chat, you'll get a teaser of what the layout of the course is, and it's really robust. Like, we jam a lot of information and activities in there for you.
And also, because I know people are very conscious of their time and how much time that will take. Everything on there is fully downloadable. So once you download it, it's yours forever, and you can, keep going back to it or read it or watch it at your own pace. So it's not limited by time. So once you have it, it's yours forever, and hopefully to become part of your family, something to pass on to people that you care about.
One more thing before we open it again for Q&A. We just want to say that our organization is not backed by the government. So we are truly a non-for-profit, and we exist thanks to the generosity of patrons like Slovak American Culture Center that Sabina is the president of, or thanks to President Riots and Jednota that have generously sponsored the production of our books. So another way that our organization stays afloat so that we can create more content is through the sale of these courses. So when you're buying this course, you're not just gaining knowledge and learning more about your heritage, but you're also supporting future projects by us. So back to the Q&A.
Thank you so much for the answer, for the question, Jim. Sabi, your turn.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the excellent presentation, Zuzka and Gabby. I just have a quick question. I know it's more of a new tradition growing up in Slovakia. We used to put salonky on the Christmas tree. So maybe you can touch on that. It's sort of something I think those that visit Slovakia or there during the communist era would remember. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for bringing that up, because yes, that's a modern tradition. So these traditions, they evolved through times, and they're in continual process of evolving. So they're not stagnant. They're ever changing, ever shifting. And the salonki, or the little chocolates that were not very tasty during the socialist era, as I remember them, they are they were preceded by sort of more locally sourced edible decorations, just apples, or dried apple slices, gingerbread cookies, nuts, and those were the things that people would use to decorate their Christmas trees with. And then later on, actually after the Second World War, when the lifestyles people started to change, people moved from villages to towns. That also was sort of reflected in the trends that were around at Christmas and in the ways they decorated their Christmas tree. And that also changed the Christmas menu as well. So it was at that time that the fried carp and the potato salad arrived. That's iconic for the holiday season today, but it's also something very new. So thank you so much for the question, Sabi, because I also remember now you have all these chocolate confections and collections available of like 2,000 different kinds. But in communism, it was not the case. We had to buy those little not so tasty chocolates and wrap them in that special foil and make it all ourselves to hang on the Christmas tree. So maybe that was more special than what we can buy now.
This comment, my mother was born in Slovakia and lived there in the interwar period, and they used real candles on the tree.
Yes.
So, think about it. It could be pretty dangerous on a Christmas tree. They use real candles.
In fact, I heard a number of stories of a Christmas tree burning on Christmas. It was still, even my grandma still did that before, because the infrastructure that we consider as basic now is just electricity that only became sort of accessible to everyone in Slovakia after the Second World War, and with the advent of communism, with systematic industrialization and modernization of the countryside. So before that, yes, people put lights on their Christmas trees using the traditional candles.
All right, in their village, they didn't have running water and they didn't have electricity, so that was common in many villages. Could I just say something else? Another substantial part of the Christmas Eve meal was the prayers. The prayers were longer and special, and oftentimes families would read readings from scriptures, and there would be songs sung on Christmas Eve night, and they were solemn songs. Now, the happy songs that were more moving would be sung after people went to Mass on the next day and on St. Stephen's Day, but the songs were very solemn, like Tika Notes and similar songs to that. Songs about
It was still part of the Advent fast, the Christmas Eve. So yes, it was celebrated. It was reflected in the absence of meat and also in the solemn nature of the songs. Exactly, Micah. Thank you so much for pointing that out.
And they call baby Jesus Ježiško.
Yeah. So thank you. And I can
we have
see
a great question here, Gabby, for you actually. Speaking of candles, what is the tradition of the candle smoke after dinner? For example, I'm not familiar with that one.
I'm not familiar with that one either. What we did do was putting candles into nutshells. You know, when you break a walnut and you have the two halves, you can put a candle inside. So that's what people did. They put the candle inside and they put the walnut shells with the candle into a bucket of water. And if the candles stay together, every member of the family would do that. So put one in, and if the candles stay together, that would mean that the family would be together next year. The family togetherness would be assured. If they drifted apart, that might have been a foretelling of some trouble in the family. I'm not familiar with the smoke, so if you know something more about this, please come on and tell us more about it.
I got a question. Is Christmas commercialized in Slovakia today like it is here in the United States?
Sorry, I had it frozen me a little bit.
President, could you repeat that, please?
Yes, could you repeat that?
Is Christmas in Slovakia commercialized today like it is in the United States?
It is. I mean, we're seeing the same trends everywhere, you know, but perhaps not to such an extent. And there is this commercial aspect of Christmas and Advent. You know, it's TV, adverts, shops, which are now closed because we're in lockdown. So silver lining of that, I guess, it's people spend less time shopping and maybe more time being with one another. But there is this other aspect of the holidays, which is the customs and the rituals that are still alive. So they keep the commercial side more in balance, I would say. And we have really seen a growing interest in those rituals in Slovakia in the last 15 or 20 years, because of course much faded away in that second half of the 20th century, you know, when modernity was all exciting and people were moving to towns and they were keen on leading more modern lives and leaving the old archaic ways behind. And that unfortunately also meant departing from certain traditions. But we're really keen on rediscovering those roots now. So people are practicing again. So there's more of that authentic spirit of holidays alive in Slovakia, as well as the commercial side. So it's definitely a wonderful time to visit Slovakia whenever it's possible to travel again.
And just as much as there's this revival in interest in Slovak culture internationally through the Slovak diaspora, there's also a revival in the interest in these older traditions. And we can really see this if you go to bookstores in the last 5 years. There's a lot of books that are very popular that are coming out about traditions, the traditions of our ancestors, and exactly as Gabriela mentioned, before the era of industrialization. So we had this wave of industrialization, we had the suppression of religion through the era of communism, and then we have to understand when capitalism came, people went really crazy. You know, they really wanted to try this new material way of life, so they parted even further away from these traditions. And now that, in a way, that those needs have been filled, people have tried that modern capitalist lifestyle. Now they're looking to reconnect back with the origins, recreate back with these traditions. So it's really beautiful to witness. And we see this also in the decor of Christmas trees, where it was quite popular to have all these plastic ornaments. Now people are going back to the traditions, to the dried oranges, to the dried apples, and also to those ornaments made of straw, which was what existed before commercialization was here and before industry came. So these were always handmade ornaments, which were very touching and were passed on through the lineage.
And those ornaments are actually, the straw ones are the remnant of the old type of the Christmas tree made of straw. Thank you, President Reyes, for asking that. It's a wonderful question. We have a couple of more raised hands here. So, Mark, your turn.
Yes, I was asking about bulbaki, which is bread dough, like balls, and they're dried, and you boil them, and you put melted butter and honey with them. Is that it? I didn't see that mentioned in the presentation.
Yes, it was, and unfortunately we couldn't mention everything because we would be here for 3 hours. But yes,
that's one of my favorites, though.
It's part of it. Part of the dinner would be the cakes or the ceremonial different kinds of bread. And bobalki, yes. They have different names in different regions of Slovakia. So I'm just gonna mute everyone. Sorry, just a second. So they were known as bobalki or pupaki or opekance too, so different names in different regions, which speaks of how important they were on the Christmas dinner table, because we have them almost everywhere. And yes, there are these little pieces of bread dough that you either pour butter over or usually also warm milk, and you serve it with honey and poppy seeds.
It's so good.
It was also the eating of this dish was also governed by certain recommendations, such as it would be the family. Sorry, I'll mute everyone again. So if you want to speak and ask a question, unmute yourself just so that we have silence. So the eating of a bobalki would usually take place from one big bowl that the family would share, again, to strengthen the family bond. And in some areas of Slovakia, the first bit of dough that was cut away when the dough for bobalki was being prepared was taken out and wrapped into fruit trees to kind of make sure that they would bear a lot of fruit in the next growing season. So it was, yes, thank you for asking that, because it was one of those very important dishes that we eat today.
Thank you for the answer and for the presentation. It was excellent. And one more thing to say is, you get a room full of Slovaks, you can't get a word in edgewise because everybody likes to talk, I say that with love.
Well, it's wonderful for people to talk, It's like sometimes it can be very quiet. So we always love when we're being asked questions and when people share their own memories and experiences.
Oh, I do that with my family. It's the holidays. You got to close your ears because it's so loud and everybody wants to talk at the same time. But that's us, That's our Slovak tradition, I guess. Okay, thank you again, Gabrielle.
Thank you so much, Mark. And there is Timothy. Yes. Can you please unmute yourself?
Hello. Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Yes, I have a question. Right now in Slovakia, what is the percentage of Christians in Slovakia that actually celebrate Christmas?
Well, Slovakia is still pretty much a Christian country. There is I think according to.
I'm so sorry. Can I interrupt? Can the core checks, please? Can you mute yourselves, because we're constantly muting, and then you guys are unmuting, and we hear you. Thank you.
So 60% of the population identify as Catholics, and then there are also Protestants, and we can't forget about the Rusin community, or those who have a Greek Catholic or Orthodox background that celebrate Christmas a little bit later in January, on January the 6th. But the traditions, the customs are Christmas is this melange of Christmas Christian tradition, which is the newer one, and the pre-Christian one. So we all celebrate in a Christian way because we all share the same traditions, and it's Christian by nature by what we are celebrating that day, which is the birth of Jesus Christ. And
unlike the Czechs, which are predominantly atheists, the Slovaks are actually pretty deeply religious people, and the further east you go, the more significant faith plays a role in their daily lives. And you can really see this also in terms of churches. Churches are full, and especially Christmas masses. Yeah. So Christianity and religion and faith play an important role, I would say, in this country during the Christmas time. That's when you really come into contact with the faith and the role of the Virgin Mary and Jesus in people's lives.
And there is always a nativity scene underneath the Christmas tree. And exactly what Zuzana said, compared to Czechs, Slovaks keep much more of these customs and traditions, also because they are more religious. You know, it goes hand in hand. So thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, Timothy, would you like to say anything?
Yeah. Are there any traditions on December 26th?
Yes, so actually it's related to food as well. So there is this custom that what you serve, the meat you serve on the 24th should have no legs, i.e. you serve a fish. On the 25th, you serve two-legged creatures, so that's birds. And on the 26th, it's the animals with four legs. So that would be pork or venison. And this was the first day really when the 24th and 25th are meant to be quite quiet days that you spend with your family. You go inward, you reflect on the meaning and the purpose of the holidays. And on the 26th, this is when you start having celebrations and visitations. This is when the parties start. There is a traditional sort of zábava or ball that takes place on the 26th. It's called Svetoštěfanská zábava because it's St. Stephen's Day. So 26th is a party day. It's a day for people to gather, to drink, to eat a lot. It's also time, yes, of balls, and hunters, polovníci, have their own special gatherings and celebrations on that day. So yes, it's a very special one. It's much more, that's when all that merriment comes through, you know, we shake off the solemnness and we just enjoy and have fun and party.
And it's a huge party day. Like I can tell you with my own family in Liptovský Mikuláš, December 26th, Svetého Štefana Oslava. I mean, everybody is out at the bars. The night goes on seemingly forever. So everyone's just letting off the steam from, as Gabriela said, from the seriousness, from the solemnness, from appreciating the birth of Jesus and all that. And also having spent all that time cooped up with family members, to see people need to let loose and just have some fun. And so it's a day many people look forward to, December 26th.
It's kind of like a little New Year's Eve.
And also because Slovaks are still a very much migrating nation. So many people from the East are in other countries in Austria, Germany, but also a lot are living in the Czech Republic and Prague. So everybody comes back home for Christmas. It's in a way to finally catch up with, you know, old schoolmates, friends, neighbors. So everyone really looks forward to that.
Thank you for that question. It brought up some fond memories in my own head, and everybody, judging by the smiles, everybody has their own memories of this day. So thank you. Okay, is there anybody else who has a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Have you, I've never been in Slovakia actually, but my grandparents are there, and a lot of the things you talked about. One of the things I've done as a child, we would go to neighbors to Vinchovats things. I never, got that, but it was to send the young men out on Christmas Eve, so they would be the first one to visit the house and to wish them Merry Christmas and the good holiday.
Yes.
Was that a Slovak thing as well in Slovakia?
Yes, exactly. So 25th is usually still a solemn day where people spend most of the time at home with the family, except for the boys or young men, the koledníci or koledari, who go around, sing carols, and bring the wishes of everything good to flow into the family during the season and beyond it. And there is a specificity to that in the regions that have the tradition of shepherds. There, the boys are dressed as shepherds, and they carry the nativity scene, and the carols that they sing, they all can celebrate or commemorate the event that was the shepherds who first came to see baby Jesus. So they sort of reenact that story in their carols and in that performance. And they're called the Jasličkári. So this is like special kind of a subgroup of this caroling tradition. And yes, it's traditionally was boys or single men who did that. So thank you for that too. I love how we're piecing together, the picture of the holidays through these questions. So thank you, Frank. Okay.
Are there any more questions? Maybe we have room for one more. Elizabeth?
Yes, I know that in my sort of small town in Connecticut, where the Slovaks who came from many small villages, and I wondered, did they share the same customs if they were from the same region, or did different villages have different customs so that they wouldn't really share that many things in common?
So Slovakia is amazing because it's small, but it's diverse in the way of sort of traditions and folk costumes. You kind of just have to walk over a hill to find something slightly different there. But the basis is the same. There might be a little, it might vary a little bit in, say what soup they serve, or, what alcohol they serve on Christmas Eve dinner. But the core is the same, and that's quite stable. The purpose of these rituals and customs is the same, even if they're carried out in a slightly different way. In some regions, if people would go bathe on Christmas Eve morning. In other regions, girls would go out and they would knock on stables to again predict love. So you will find little curiosities if you were to go through the villages, but people would have much more in common than that which differentiated them.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Will you be doing another webinar for Lent or Easter or New Year's or other traditions and holidays?
Certainly, we're actually very much looking forward to cooperating and co-creating with Jednota once again for future webinars, especially during these key times of year like Christmas and Easter. So this is the beginning of hopefully a long friendship.
Oh, great. Great news. Thank you.
You're welcome. We have many topics to cover.
Yes.
Thank you. So I think if there are no more questions, we will
hand it over actually to Sabina Sabados to close it off for us.
Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you to all of the participants for your excellent questions. Thank you, Dr. Gabriela Verahezova, for an interesting presentation, and Dr. Zuzana Pavlovic for sharing all of these beautiful traditions with us. Hopefully they have inspired you to incorporate more of Slovak traditions into your own Christmas preparations. One of my personal favorites is to sit together at the dinner table after our prayer, and the eldest of the family puts a cross on the forehead of each family member with honey, so that you're sweet all year. So that's something that my family has done for many years. That's a tradition. Again, thank you to our Jednota members for attending this evening. A special thank you to President Rajec. I also see Executive Secretary Ken Arenta is joining us tonight, and several other board members. So thank you for bringing us these opportunities to get together, supported by our executive management. And if you're interested in more of these webinars, as was shared, I think there will be other opportunities for different topics. So if you have any specific suggestions, please reach out to the home office and share those. And again, thank you for joining us. Prajem vám požehnané Vianoce, wishing you all a blessed Christmas.
Thank you.
Veselé Vianoce.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas and Dobra.